It's Friday night, just past midnight. Most of the world sleeps, but not you, not me. We are awake. In the hour when silence weighs heavy and the skin of the world feels thin, welcome to Loom, stories for the sleepless hour. Tonight we climb into the high Himalayas. The air is thin, sharp as glass in the lungs. Each breath burns, every exhale a pale ghost rising in the dark. The snow beneath your boots groans with each step, as if even the mountain resents your passing. Prayer flags snap in the wind. Red, blue, yellow, green. Their threads worn and fraying, their mantras carried off into the night. A yak bell tolls somewhere below, faint and hollow, echoing as if rung in another world. The ridge rises black against the sky, which is salted with stars. The peaks watch like guardians, silent and unmoving. The world is still, but not empty. You can feel it, a presence, weightless, but near. A gaze that brushes the skin, though no one stands beside you. The Sherpas say this land is never silent, that in the ridges and in the ravines something waits. Its name is spoken softly or not at all. They call it the Yeti. Some say beast, some say spirit, some even say shadow. But here, in the Himalayas, nothing is ever what it seems. So settle in, cozy up with a cup of tea if you have one. Hold your teddy bear close. You will need every bit of comfort before the night is through. Let's begin with the origins and folklore. The Yeti is not just a shadow on the ridge. It has names, it has stories, it has warnings passed down for centuries in the high valleys. To understand what walks in the snow, you must first hear what the Sherpas and Tibetans whisper about it. In the West, they call it the abominable snowman, a creature of curiosity, a cryptid to puzzle over in magazines. But here, in the Himalayas, the Yeti is no curiosity. It is presence. Among the Sherpas, it is known as migö, the wild man. To Tibetans, metoh-kangmi, the man-bear snowman. Names that blur man and beast, because the Yeti is said to walk between both. It is not only animal, it is guardian, warmth, omen. The elders say it is tied to the bayous, the hidden valleys of refuge, secret sanctuaries said to appear only at the end of the world. They believe the Yeti is the sentinel of those doorways. It keeps them closed. If you wander too close, it turns you back. Sometimes it is protector. Monks whisper that the Yeti shadows lost travelers, unseen, pushing them toward safety, always from cliffs, but just as often, it is devourer. Villagers tell of Yetis descending at night, carrying off yaks, leaving only blood in snow. Each Sherpa child knows the warnings. Do not mock the Yeti. Do not shout its name in jest. Do not wander alone after dark. To do so is to call it near. And they say the Yeti is not bound to this place alone. It leaves footprints in snow, clear as a man's hand. You follow them, and then they stop. Not at a wall or rock, not at a crevasse. They stop in open ground, as if the creature stepped into another realm and vanished. This is why some call it a spirit being, a presence that can move between worlds, the threshold keeper of the Bayous. To glimpse the Yeti is to glimpse a doorway you were never meant to see. Monks in deep retreat have spoken of the Yeti appearing in visions, and still others say the Yeti is not vision, not beast, but key, the guardian of passages between worlds. Is the Yeti hiding something? Is the Yeti a key to a door of secret knowledge, of ancient passageways that lead to other places beyond our world? Like the spirits of the cremation grounds at Pushuputanath, the Yeti belongs to the liminal. It is neither wholly here or wholly gone. Beast, spirit, shadow. The Yeti is all of these and none. And so the stories are told, not with laughter, but with lowered voice, as if the teller fears the very words might summon it from the snow. Now I will tell you some real accounts by Western eyes. Explorers, climbers, men who carried journals and cameras instead of prayer beads. Their words still lie in ink and photograph, recordings of figures in the snow. 1925, N.A. Tombazi, a Greek photographer, joined a British geological expedition in Sikkim. At 15,000 feet, he lifted his field glasses and saw a figure moving against the snow. Not a yak, not a bear. It walked upright, bending to pull at shrubs, standing straight again. He watched for minutes, holding his breath, noting its dark form against the brightness. The movements were human, yet not. When the figure retreated into the shadows, Tombazi followed. There, in the snow, he found its traces, footprints 6, 7 inches long, with clear marks of toes. They led upwards into desolation, and then they were gone. He wrote later that no bear, no known creature of the mountains could match what he had seen. He left with photographs of rocks and peaks, but not of the thing itself, only the memory of a figure walking where no man should. Years later, in 1951, an Everest reconnaissance party led by Eric Shipton found something even harder to dismiss. On the Loom Glacier, in hard ice, they came across a line of prints. Enormous, deliberate, each one a foot long, with 5 distinct toes, splayed wide. Shipton placed his ice axe between them and took the photograph that would make the Yeti famous. The prints did not wander aimlessly. They followed a clear line, as if the creature had walked with purpose across the glacier, indifferent to storm or stone. To this day, the photographs remain unexplained. Bears do not stride so far upright. When Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay stood at the top of Everest in 1953, the world asked them more about just the climb. They asked about the Yeti. Tenzin himself admitted he had not seen it, but his father had. He described it as tall, covered in hair, walking upright across snowfields, not lumbering, not beastly, but deliberate, almost human. For Sherpas, this was no tale. The Yeti was a presence they accepted as fact, spoken of in lowered voice. For the man that reached the roof of the world, the Yeti was not myth, but memory carried in his father. Hillary would later dismiss much of the legend, but he too stood before the scalp of Khumjung, and he too could not deny the strangeness of those photographs in the snow. 1970s. Reinhold Messner, perhaps the greatest climber of all time. Alone in eastern Tibet in 1970s, he said he encountered it. Not in full view, not in daylight, but in the dark. On a ridge where the wind howled and the air froze in its chest, he saw a form, massive, looming, moving with uncanny speed. He described terror unlike anything he had known, deeper than reason, a primal fear, as if every bone in his body recognized a predator older than man. Messner would later write that the Yeti might be a kind of Tibetan bear, misunderstood and mythologized. But even in his skepticism, he confessed, the presence he felt that night was something no explanation could erase. For a man who stood on Everest without oxygen, who faced death 100 times, it was the Yeti that left him shaken. These are not idle campfire tales. They are written in expedition journals, photographed in ice, spoken by climbers and guides whose lives were forged in these mountains. Something was there. Something walked upright in the snow, and the world has never agreed on what. Yet the Yeti is not only footprints and fear. High in Khumjung, there is something you can see with your own eyes. A relic behind glass. A scalp the Sherpas say belonged to the Yeti itself. High above Namche Bazaar, on the slopes where Everest first begins to rise into the sky, there is a monastery. Khumjung, a village of stone houses pressed against the mountain, where yaks graze and clouds fall low. Inside that monastery is a relic. Behind glass sits a cone of dark hair, coarse and reddish at the tips, thick and matted with age. It is shaped like a skull cap, small, almost crown-like. The Sherpas call it a Yeti's scalp. For centuries, the villagers believed it proof of what walked in the high passes. Not curiosity, not trophy, but a sacred reminder. When Edmund Hillary returned to the Campbell after his summit of Everest, he came to see the relic himself. In the 1960s, he arranged to have it examined by scientists. The scalp was carried from village to city, from Kathmandu to London. Tests were done. Experts declared, not Yeti, goat hair, antelope hide, nothing more. And yet, the villagers shook their heads. To them, they were hiding something. This was undoubtedly a Yeti skull. To them, the scalp has never been about zoology. It was about memory. It was about reverence. They say science measures hairs, but it cannot measure the fear in the shepherd's heart when the snow breaks and the shadows loom. It cannot measure the footprints circling a tent at night, or the silence that falls just before a howl. Even Hillary, hardened by summits and storms, admitted that the relic carried weight, way beyond explanation. He could dismiss it in words, but he could not unerase the ease of holding it. Today, the scalp is still there. I've seen it. Behind the glass of the Khumjung monastery, in a case dimly lit by mountain sun. Pilgrims bow to it, not with questions, but with offerings. The monks say it protects the village, keeping avalanches and sickness away. But they also warn relics hold spirits. To keep such a thing confined may leave the Yeti restless, its presence trapped, waiting. Stand before it and you feel it yourself. The glass fogs with your breath. The coarse hair, dark and brittle, seems to shift in the light. And in the silence of the monastery, You sense something is watching back. And then there are the stories few dare to speak, whispers of caves honeycombed in the cliffs of Mustan, where monks sealed themselves away and knowledge too dangerous to scatter still sleeps. They say the Yeti walks there as guardian. The mountains carry stories the maps will not show. Among the Sherpas, the Yeti is not only beast or relic, it is omen, it is presence. They say the Yeti howls before an avalanche, a cry rolling through the ridges, so deep it shakes the marrow. When the sound carries, villagers know to leave the slopes, for snow will soon come roaring down. Some call it a warning, others call it a curse. Climbers too have told of nights in canvas tents where the wind is still. They wake to silence, heavy as stone. Step outside, and the snow is unbroken except for footprints, large, circling the tent in wide arcs. When morning comes, the trail is there, plain and undeniable, but no creature in sight. For aesthetics and retreat, the Yeti is test. In the cave of the Khumjung, monks sit in silence, fasting, waiting for visions. They tell of the Yeti appearing, taller than the mouth of the cave, fur stiffed with frost, eyes like embers. It says nothing. It only stands waiting. To rise in fear is to fall. To hold still, unmoving, is to endure. Some emerge from these retreats changed, their faces lined with something deeper than hunger. Some never emerge at all. Villagers tell of yak pens raided in the dark, doors unbroken. No sign of struggle, but in the morning the animals are gone and the snow runs red. No wolf leaves such order, no bear takes without tearing. The elders shake their head and whisper, Yeti. Others say it comes not with blood, but with silence. A herder, walking alone, feels the air shift. His shadow lengthens. Another shadow joins it, larger, heavier. He looks up, only snow, but his heart races. And when he returns to the village, the prints are there, besides his own, twice his size, pacing him step for step. And still others claim the Yeti is not seen at all, but dreamed. They wake to find it standing in the doorway, massive, fur dripping with meltwater, breath misting in the room. It lifts one arm, beckoning them outside. If they follow, the night swallows them. If they do not, they wake shaking, the fire cold. In the morning, footprints mark the snow outside the door, though no visitor entered. Like the ghosts at Pushuputana, the Yeti hovers between worlds, flesh and omen, protector and predator. It vanishes into snow, and yet it leaves traces that cannot be denied. And so, the stories endure, not told in laughter, but in lowered voices. For to speak of the Yeti is to invite its nearness, and in the high Himalayas, nearness can mean disappearance. Forbidden knowledge. So what is the Yeti? Beast? Spirit? Shadow? A creature born of blood? Or a sentinel at the edge of worlds? Perhaps all of these, perhaps none. In the high deserts of Mustang, the cliffs are honeycombed with thousands of caves. Some natural, some carved by human hands, Centuries ago, monks and hermits climbed into them and sealed the doors behind. Some sat in meditation until bone turned to dust. Others left behind relics, scrolls, manuscripts, fragments of prayers inked on palm leaves. When explorers entered centuries later, they found skeletons sitting cross-legged in alcoves, manuscripts brittled with age, dust layered thick, silence pressed into stone. And among the villagers of Mustang, a belief endures that these caves are not empty, that they are guarded, not by men, but by the Yeti. Some say the Yeti walks the cliffs at night, pacing the entrances, keeping the manuscripts safe, knowledge too dangerous to scatter, secrets too deep to trust to the careless. The whisper is always the same. The Yeti is not only flesh, it is guardian, a sentinel that moves between worlds, ensuring certain doors stay closed. There are stories of travelers who tried to enter the caves alone. They returned pale, shaking, saying they heard footsteps in the dark, heavy and deliberate. Some swear they saw a shadow bend low through the entrance, too broad for the passage, eyes faintly glowing. And then there is the older legend that the Yeti itself is bound to a text, a mantra never spoken, written only once. To find the manuscript is to see the Yeti. To read it is to summon. Few dare to speak of it openly, but in whispers the tale persists. Follow the footprints long enough, and they lead not to animal, but to a door, a passage the living are not meant to open. What is it guarding? A cave of bones? A fragment of the lost texts? A doorway into a valley that appears only when the world ends? No one can say, but the stories leave the same question. What if the Yeti is not what we seek, but what stands between us and what we were never meant to touch? Beast, spirit, shadow? The Yeti has been called all of these. To the Sherpa, it's migö, the wild man. To the Tibetans, metoh-kangmi, the man-bear snowman. To climbers, it is footprints that should not be, shadows that vanish, fear that lingers. It howls before avalanches. It circles tents in the night. It appears in dreams and visions, in caves where silence has no end. Perhaps it's flesh, perhaps it's omen, perhaps it is the sentinel of hidden valleys, guarding doors that were never meant for us. And so I leave you with this. If you woke to find its prints outside your door, prints larger than your hand pressed deep into the snow, would you follow them? Or would you turn back, knowing something waits beyond, watching from the ridges, deciding if you are meant to pass? This has been Loom, produced by the Nayampalli House, keepers of story, spirit, and shadow. Until the next sleepless hour,